Good evening, everyone. I hope that you had a chance to either get some wine, some cheese, and crackers. I know you just got up from dinner, but it's the forest. Keep eating. Um, I do want to welcome you to the executive staff update. And before we get started, I want to let you know that we have people who are attending this meeting via webinar. So for those of you who are on webinar, thank you very much. And we cannot take your questions live when we go to the Q&A session, but if you put your questions in the chat, we'll be glad to address them. We'll either reach back out directly to you, or we will add that as an addendum to the minutes, and they will be posted on site as well. So this is our second executive staff update of the year. This is the final one for fiscal year 2025. And we have some guests here that I'd like to introduce. We certainly have members of our governing board here tonight. And I will start with Lynn Favor. Remember, just wave, Lynn, it's good. And Lynn chairs our healthcare committee as a part of the board committee responsibility, and we appreciate that. And you fight Chapel Hill traffic 3 or 4 times a month, yes. And we have Larry Mineta, who is here, a new member of our board. Larry, thank you. And we're glad to have you. I'm glad that that Central European country let you go for a minute. And John Rasmussen. And John sits on our finance committee. Larry's on long-range planning. And then Chuck Kennedy, who is the chairman of our board. And then we have Jim Friedman, who is a member of the governing board and is a member by virtue of his being the president of the Resident Association. And we know everybody knows Jim, right? I did, Lynn, first. I did, Lynn. And there are also 2 key staff positions. And while we communicated some of the stay, I think they're so new that they went home. I think they didn't quite believe us. But this week we brought on Catherine Coleman, who is the new general manager of dining services. And no, she is not here to replace Nathan. That's the rumor I heard. No, but we do recognize that as we grow, the responsibilities also grow, and having that expertise in-house will be important. Catherine is a certified executive chef and a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America. She's had 20 years of international culinary experience, including time in France, Italy, Seattle, New York, and even cooking for Anthony Bourdain. That would scare me to death. Locally, she has taught at the Art Institute of Raleigh-Durham, Durham Tech, and at A Southern Season. She lives in Durham with her husband, 2 children, and 2 rescue dogs. And her bio will be in the Forest Forward, I think, this week. Also, we've brought on Tina Young, who is a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing RN. She's had over 20 years experience in acute and long-term care. She had 7 years most recently at a new startup long-term care facility in North Carolina. And her expertise is in process and procedure, clinical outcomes, resident-directed care, and staff development. She has come on as our new director of nursing. She is in the process of transitioning with Caroline Brown, who is our former director of nursing, who is moving on to another position. So we welcome them. We'll make sure that you have a chance to meet them, maybe even as early as this Friday at our social hour. So what I do want to talk to you about is, why do we do an executive staff update? Executive staff updates are mandated by the Department of Insurance. They have to occur twice a year. They can be themed as one chooses, but usually one is to keep up with where are you going this year, strategically, operationally, state of the state, if you will. That usually happens in the spring. In the fall, we do our budget presentation to walk through the budget as we need to, and to walk through and explain all of the decision-making that went into the fiscal year 26 budget. And that's the topic for today, the budget overview and some of the key program focus. You will also notice that some of our directors are here, and Leanne Bailey Clayton is our Director of Health Services. Rashad Wilson, Director of Information Technology. Nathan, he who runs everything, Director of General Services, Community Services. April Ravelli, Director of Marketing, pretty outstanding, 71 units sold, getting there. Other people pay third-party consultants to do what your team did successfully, so congratulations. And then Sarah Haney, and Director of Community Life. And of course, I'm Anita Holt, CEO of The Forest, and Karen Henry is our CFO. So we're doing the talking, but know that if you have questions, and we have a question and answer period at the end, if you need to direct it to a particular director, please do so. In order to make sure that everyone hears and gets the question, we will repeat your question and ask that you do use the mic. Okay. Next slide. So, you know, the story doesn't change much, and sometimes there's no such thing as good news along the way. And one of the things for fiscal year 2026 is we still continue to face the challenges of workforce, whether there are people available to do the jobs that you have, whether they're willing to make the commitment, what do they need in order for that to be sustainable? And then how do we look at what we offer future employees so that we are connecting where people are, getting what we need in order to provide services here? We have seen some easing in the challenge, and the reality is, post-COVID, everything that glittered was gold. People were saying, come to us, we'll give you everything, we'll sign you on, we'll do this, blah, blah, blah. And then they found out, 90 days later, well, we'll give you that bonus, but you got to work a whole year for it, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of changing and moving and shifting parts. And, we're way more fun than Target. So we found that we saw a lot of people returning, people that left that came back that we were glad to welcome back. And, not all times that people leave a job, it's not always the worst thing that could happen. Sometimes people need to move on, and that's okay. What that has done is it's created some opportunities for us to have some extraordinary people. We gave a job fair 4 weeks ago, and we had over 166 people who showed up. That was pretty amazing. We made 37 contingent offers of hire, and those people have been coming on board. So we continue to see not only our existing staffing improve, but the ability to staff for the terraces and the expansion of our campus has also been enhanced as we have continued to be in relationship with the workforce and the marketplace. Construction weary. Lord knows everybody is done, tired, let it be over with construction, and we're almost there. They're doing the last of the punch list items. Now, does that mean we never pick up hammer and tong again? No, because there's work to do after they're gone. There's some sidewalk work, there's some paving, there's some painting. But there will always be that kind of work around this campus. But the first order of business post-construction is to get everything that was secondary completed and brought back online and ready to go. Aren't you happy, Nathan? He's ignoring. He's so happy he just crossed his arms and went like this. So on today's presentation, we'll speak to our focus over the next year by providing an overview of the following: the annual budget plan and operating plan, some of the key operating expectations and outcomes, and also a bit of our strategic focus and implementation plans as we move forward.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Karen Henry, and I've served as the corporation's treasurer and CFO for the past 20 years. Wow. When I say that to new team members in their orientation, I say, I started when I was 5. But I have to say, I don't feel older, but I have to wear these. So there you go. But I can see. So for those of you that are new residents, a short description of my role is I oversee all that is financial. So anything that you picture that has a number on it, I probably have some type of involvement with that. And I'm also responsible for financial reporting and compliance. So before we dive into the presentation, I wanted to take this opportunity to give a brief overview of our process. This presentation is what you might call the final act of the play, and it may take us 15 or 20 minutes or so to go over. However, I can assure you that it took much longer than that to prepare. We didn't just simply change the date and say, ooh, we're all done. The budget is a very deliberate process that begins at the end of April, the beginning of May, just after the second quarter financial results are completed. The leadership team meets together to discuss and agree on the targets and assumptions that will be incorporated into the budget development. This is a team effort. No one person or one department can do what needs to be done to fulfill our obligations and our commitments. So therefore, we work together as a team to establish these goals. And this is where it all starts. I wish that I could say that strong financial health just happens, but it doesn't. It must first begin with sound planning based upon common goals and objectives that can be measured and tracked, but most importantly, be developed by those that will be responsible for the oversight and delivery of those promises. Me and Anita and Sharon don't tell the directors, this is what your budget is going to be. I've worked for companies that did that before, and I'll tell you, it really didn't end very well because they didn't buy into it, right? So they are the ones that have to deliver their budgets, and they develop them. So what are our key ingredients in the budget? First and foremost, each director develops their budget that includes the resources that are needed to fulfill the obligations to you, the residents, that are in your contract. We ask these questions. Have there been any changes to the contract or services this year that would need to be incorporated into this year's budget? Have there been any changes in regulations, reporting requirements, or our debt covenants? What's the environment as it relates to staff resources and competition and pricing for goods and services? Are there any initiatives in the long-range plan that need to be incorporated in this year's budget? And this evening, Anita and I will tell you how we address those key questions. Another thing I want you to keep in mind as we're talking about this, I want you to keep in mind that we are a service industry. So 70% of the total operating expenses represent wages and benefits for our staff. Having the right people in the right place, paid competitively, and provided with the right training and support is necessary and critical to deliver quality services to our residents. This year's budget reflects that commitment to our staff and the residents that we serve. 58% of the increase in the cost of operation, and that is the expenses that are directly related to providing those services, were attributable to staffing. We'll provide more detail later in the presentation. I want to make an overall note on what's different about this year's budget. After 2.5 years of construction, we are so excited that the building is substantially complete and we are beginning to welcome new residents. Woohoo! Yippee! Therefore, you'll see some larger numbers than previous budgets, and that's because we've incorporated the operations of the addition of the new building and the services into the upcoming year's budget. As some longer-term residents may recall, back in 2018, when we began this journey, the main goal in the affordability and the development of the campus plan and the feasibility studies was that the two phases of the project, phase one, the health center, and phase two, our terraces, had to be able to pay for themselves and essentially be able to stand alone. The development of this year's budget was grounded in this guiding principle. And from the letter that you have just received from our board chairman, our goal has been achieved. The increase in fees was in line with the service and operating needs, as well as met financial obligations and compliance. I'd like to take this opportunity as CFO to publicly give kudos to the leadership team for the hard work that they have done to deliver a budget amid these very challenging times that, number one, includes resources necessary to fulfill service obligations promised to you, provides no degradation in the services that we provide, maintains debt covenants and all other regulatory compliance and certifications, and maintains financial strength and marketability. And now some numbers. Next slide. The leadership team met at the beginning of the budget process and built their budgets based on the key assumptions that you see here. We're projecting that 22 independent living move-ins. Now, these don't include the new terrace apartments. This is the ordinary, it's usually 22 move-ins that we have a year based on historic as well as actuary reports. That will generate $6.3 million in entrance fees to pay for the debt service, refunds, and capital expenditures. The new apartments will generate $38 million in entrance fees, of which $29.5 million will be utilized to pay down the debt. Next slide. This top-level summary of the total budget for fiscal year 2026 shows an increase in operating revenue of 30.7%, an increase in operating expenses of 18.5%, resulting in an operating margin of 19.72%. The increase in the operating margin of 8.28% was essential to pay for the additional resources and debt that was incurred from the financing of the new building. Next slide, please. The following reflects the key operating statistics that are incorporated into this budget. It is not just important to plan, but more importantly, it is to have a means to track the performance and monitor to be able to make adjustments. This dashboard is reviewed by our team monthly and is also included in the board package before each of their meetings. Financial success for the Forest depends on three things: occupancy, expense control, and new independent living entrance fees. When all of these goals are met, we are able to pay for the operating expenses, the capital expenditures, and debt service without what I say going into the savings account or our reserves. And this slide gives you an illustrated view in numbers of what success looks like. So if you look at the budget 2026 column, if occupancy is on target, then the independent living and healthcare fees will generate the operating revenue of $33.7 million to pay for the $27.1 million of operating expenses, which are the direct costs of providing those services. If the directors are in line with their budgets, the result will be $6.7 million in operating income that may be utilized to pay for the $2.5 million of capital expenditures. The debt service of $7.3 million, no, I don't have that on my house. That's the interest and principal that the Forest owes each year on its debt, is paid for by the entrance fees from the new independent living residences, those 22, and the margin from the revenue that's generated from the new apartments. Next slide. These are our key operating statistics that we focus on operationally. I want to highlight two in particular as they are key to maintaining our compliance. Days cash on hand. So what is that? It represents the number of days of cash that is available to pay for operating expenses. 120 days is required for our bond covenants, 250 for Truist, which is the bank that holds our debt, and 500 to 700 days for our Fitch rating. Our actuals have ranged from 660 to 720, which is about 2 years. And we have budgeted a target of 550. The debt service coverage ratio, this is a ratio that lenders and rating agencies are particularly interested in because it tells them how many times you are able to pay the interest and principal on the debt with cash that's generated from your operations, not from investment income or donations. And the number also includes any entry fees that we collect on new residences, less any refunds that we pay out. 1.2 times is required for the debt. Our actuals have ranged from 2.2 to 3.2, and our budget has a target of 2.5. Additions to the wait list. Our marketing team does an absolutely awesome job. And as April would say, but we still have to keep doing it, right? So our target is 80, which they've really beat this year, which is amazing because they've been selling the terraces and still doing everything. Like, kudos to you guys. But this is essential because it will ensure that we have a ready and available list of people to draw upon whenever independent living residence becomes open. Next slide. So now let's talk about the operating expenses. Total operating expenses, which represent service delivery, increased $4.2 million from prior year's budget. And in the next few slides, Anita and I will highlight what were the major drivers. Next slide. $851,000, or 20% of the operating expense increase, was related to technology, security, and insurance. $116,000 were for costs associated with enhancing monitoring for security threats. I mean, really, they're really, really good, and they're getting better. So we do a really good job with that. Maintaining compliance with HIPAA regulations regarding electronic information, and our software licensing fees for such thing as our timekeeping, electronic health records, and financial reporting systems. We had a $42,000 increase in our property insurance for the general property insurance, and then to insure the new building, it was another $148,000. And there was a $57,000 increase in our workers' compensation premium. We have new utilities for the new building. That's about $452,000 for water, gas, electric, and sanitation. $36,000 was with our contract with Spectrum. We added new service for the terraces building and our apartments. Next slide. And now I'll turn it over to Anita.
Karen shared with you earlier that the bulk of our expenditures really rely on employees and how we manage that. The cost of living increase this year was budgeted at 3% and will it cost us $435,000 in this year's budget. We have normal increases that that may occur when we look every year to see, are we in the marketplace? Are we paying a competitive wage, et cetera? Those adjustments occur during the year, and we've usually planned for them. Excuse me. The cost of living goes to everyone, but we also recognize in annual performance, if one occasionally exceeds performance, they receive a flat $1,000, recognizing that work. And if they are exceptional, they get a $1,500 check. That allows us to keep wages from compressing and to be able to manage that amount and know that we're recognizing work well done, but we also then are looking at the marketplace and adjusting salaries as appropriate. We did expend money on recruitment initiatives. There was a time where you put the ad out, people filled it in, and that was done. Being in the marketplace, being seen, being available, creating events by which people can know about the forest. You'd be surprised how many people of the 166 who found their way said they didn't know that all of this was back here and all of the different things that we did. We've been working with our regular advertising agency to not only brand employment here, but we're up on all of the digital pathways to jobs. We've increased our profile on Indeed. We do some old-fashioned, good old-fashioned newspaper ads, even though they're not the exciting, sexy thing to do. People still read the paper. And we've started using some of our employees in some of our ads, so don't be surprised if you see Ray, the cook, up on 147 on a billboard talking about finding your life at the Forest at Duke. So we have a lot of recruitment initiatives, and we'll continue to do that. In addition, we had to add additional staff to cover reception, technology, but there really was pretty light increase of FTEs, FTEs being a full-time equivalent. One FTE is a person that works 40 hours, but it could be 3 people that work a combination that is 40 hours. One of the things and the largest hires that we've made is in the dining department, and that is because we've added another restaurant. And no matter how you slice it, you can't cook it at the bistro over in Hartwood. So having the right staffing, having the cooks, et cetera, doing that, they will also, the secondary kitchen in the bistro also support some of the large batch cooking that we need to be able to do for the health center. So that's another expansion of our ability to provide service. General services is about more housekeepers, some more security, and some more drivers. And those things are just part of being able to provide the services at the consistent level throughout the campus. So overall, what we really did see is about $2 million in total, and it changed, but it's really directly tied to direct service. The one thing we did add that I think is important for you to know is we've added a position of a licensed nurse from 11 to 7 who will not be on the floor providing care. Well, she'll probably, when she's not on call or out on a call, be doing some internal audit work for us. But basically to make sure that when we have an emergency call between the hours of 11 and 7, we're not pulling a nurse out of the health center. And if we have 2 calls at the same time, which rarely happens, but can happen, then we have that backup. So we have security, we have a first respond nurse, and then a second respond nurse, making sure that we don't denigrate the availability or scope of service in the health center, but still able to respond to those overnight calls, which is when the bulk of emergency response calls occurs. Next slide. It's domain. So looking at a little bit at what else we saw, everywhere. Has anybody been to the grocery store lately? The bag keeps getting emptier, but the price keeps going up. And we are no exception. Fortunately, with dining, we did see an increase in raw food. We know the number of meals that we're anticipating serving in the course of a year. We know the cost of our menus. We also know that we use several different purveyors. We have account with US Foods and with Cisco. We also have separate smaller accounts for fresh fish and local purveyors of produce, et cetera. So if we can't get what we want because there are supply chain interruptions or prices are ridiculous, we have some options to get what we want without degrading the quality of what we purchase. We also know that we experienced increases in janitorial supplies and paper and equipment. Basically, there isn't really anything we use that didn't go up, but we do make sure that any contracted services we provide, that contract that provide for equipment or supplies, we look at that annually. And in fact, we've made some changes because of pricing that just went higher than we wanted to go, or service that wasn't within our expectation. Maintenance, the biggest thing is it plumbing supplies, Nathan? Plumbing supplies? I am just boring you to death, aren't I? Okay. Plumbing supplies is one of the things that Nathan always tells me is one of the worst things we have to do in terms of purchasing. But I also know that grounds increasingly has gone up. Now, we had a little bit of luck this year, but we've had luck for a couple of years and we haven't had any snow. It only takes 1 or 2 good ones. Huh? I knocked on wood. But you know that those are the kinds of things that you budget for and you pray they don't happen. And then the regular supplies, housekeeping, the things that we've added basically have been the result of pricing in the marketplace. We change wherever possible, but again, I'm not going to buy cheap and have it not do the job. Resident entertainment and programs went up by about $100,000. Okay, if anybody noticed that one of the things that happens at the Forest is you should not be bored. You can find something to do. You may not like everything, but there is something. And part of that has been the community life team really taking a very active look at what are the things people like to do, what are the things that can be self-directed, what are the things we can do off campus, on campus, and a blend of those. Some of those things are free, and some of those things are charged. Some of those we meet you halfway. And as we grow, you're going to continue to see that. There's never going to be a time on this campus when everybody on this campus can get in one room at the same time for a thing. but there will always be times on this campus when we're able to run parallel programming or also to do some repeat programming so people can have access to the things that they would like in the way that they would like to see them. That is a commitment that your team has done. You never want to leave her team alone because you'll have like 5 different things to do in 1/2 hour. But thank you very much, Sarah. And we do feel that that has been a good use of resources, and it's also been a good partnership with our residents and our team members. Karen?
Next slide. So, in summary, the greatest part. So, we spoke a lot about things this evening, and I don't expect you to remember everything. But what I would like you to take away from tonight is this: the board just approved a budget that is fiscally responsible and provides the resources that are necessary to fulfill obligations to you in their contract, as well as meets all bond and regulatory requirements. It maintains our commitment to managing fee increases consistent with operations, and all costs related to building the Terraces building are funded through the financing. They are not paid for with monthly fees or operating cash. Thank you for your attendance, and now I'd like to turn it back over to Anita.
Jack in the Box. So there are some things that are new or changed. I spoke a little bit to that when I talked about community life and the expansion of activities and programs and services, community connection and those kinds of things, which will continue to grow. And certainly as we continue to use our additional space and creating those opportunities on this campus. In terms of community services, what we know is we have to do more of it in different places, and certainly making sure that we can care for not only our new building, but our existing building. There's certainly things that we need to slowly reinvest in. After all, it's been 10 years. No, Nina, Anita, the jackhammer CEO who tears up everything is not suggesting we tear up the community center. I am suggesting that I know there are things we need to take care of, and we will be doing that, whether it's a refresh, et cetera. The Forest at Home, what has been most wonderful about that in the past year is it has grown as people have come to recognize that a companion or CNA or the Forest at Home in general can do more than just personal care needs, can be an assistant, can accompany people, can be a companion, can shop for or do other tasks or things that people need. In fact, one person uses home care as a personal assistant. So that's not so bad. They get to type on the computer and do all that good stuff. So, but we're finding that people and residents in general are finding ways to use home care in ways that make their life easier at the Forest. And in fact, last month, what was the number? Was it 49,000? 40,000 hours? $49,000, that's right. I knew it couldn't be that. Yeah, $49,000, which is a lot of hours at $23 an hour. So it was an expansion of the amount of services that we've provided. We have been able to do 24-hour care and support. We also, during our recent hiring fair, I think we took in 7 people to meet the client need that we have. The other thing that we are working on is looking at a way for those PRN, because if you're in home care, you never have a set schedule, but the way they can offer some PRN services in our health center, and they're working on that right now. Our early acceptance program will continue to be a focus of what we grow. 18 members of our early acceptance program are becoming residents and will be living here within the next month or so. And but April and her team, we never run out of things to sell or opportunities to sell. And in fact, we are approaching some of those communities that serve older adults but don't have the adjacent healthcare or supportive services. So finding a way to provide that, knowing that they won't further use our independent living campus, but they do pay a premium for having access where appropriate to our health center. And that does help us that in not only an entrance fee, but also in monthly fees. The Health Center and Health Services continues to be highly invested in our training and ongoing training for the Eden model. of service, which is a small house model. We didn't buy it lock, stock, and barrel, but have taken on the training, have been able to work with revising it in a way and adjusting it to make sense at the forest. We will continue to do that as the small house continues to grow as a model of care and a way of service. And ongoing training has to be a key part of that, but we are also certifying and developing our own in-house trainers. We will continue in the health center with a relationship with one, if not two, different outside agencies that certify CNAs. One of them, they actually do their practicum here, so that means we get to take the cream off the top of that particular group of people, and we've been able to bring staff in that way. The health center has also been working steadfastly to eliminate the use of agency. We're doing that in tandem with the staff and the ways in which we can support each other and make that happen. We will, however, does it ever end? If we're ever in danger of not meeting the state mandate for hours, that's when we will reach out for agency, and we determine that. But again, our goal is we want our health center staffed by our people who've been trained to provide care the way we want it provided at the Forest at Duke. Resource development is actually one of our strategic goals, continuing. The reality is resource development is a profession in and of itself. It can be a delegated or assigned duty, and it'll never get to be much more than it is now. An annual letter, some campaigns, and the ability to manage internally. But if we really want to develop a resource development program, then we need to invest in the expertise to do so. That is one of the initiatives that is considered under a strategic plan going forward. And while that has not been approved at this point, it is something that is under conversation. We certainly will keep doing what we've done, and through your generosity and those of many of our friends and stakeholders, and even our team members, we have seen growth in the Employee Emergency Fund, our Catalyst Fund, the Boswick Scholarship Fund, and our Student Education and Tuition and Reimbursement Fund, as well as people who have donated over time to the Benevolent Care Fund, taking care of those who, through no fault of their own, may have exhausted their resources and making sure that they are not asked to leave the forest. Strategic planning continues, that never stops. We had completed most of what was Vision 2027, and we're in the process of completing a strategic plan that will be reviewed by the board in October. And following that, we'll then be out there in our initiatives right away. Let's face it, I don't know how tired everybody else is of construction, but I know I am. And so one of the things we said is, if we look at strategic initiatives, let's take some time and do some education about where are we going as an industry, where is the forest going, do some of the research, get the demographics, get the knowledge. So as we begin to explore strategies and tactics, we are armed with the kind of information that will help us ask the right questions, get more information, and make better decisions. This year is no less full than the past year. The good part is that we're going to see a milestone completed, and this is another opportunity to thank all of you for your grace and your kindness during a period of upheaval, change, and what do you mean you're going to do that? So I do say thank you for that. Next slide. Okay, we're going to questions and answers. Did you have a summary or you did it? Okay, we're going to questions and answers. Just for the sake of my brain, which is losing stuff, ask one question, not five. And then we'll repeat it. No questions?
Are Leanne and I going to be bored? Shall we sing? Oh, Leanne can sing. I cannot.
Well, if you have no questions, I don't need to tap dance. We don't, I knew we'd get something.
What is the situation with the HR director? Do we have one?
No, and we don't have an HR director, but what we did is we hired an HR consultant to kind of pull apart our department and really figure out, it's not our first rodeo with an HR director, so we wanted to take a real critical look at what was missing, what were we not getting right. The person who came in to do this for us is Andrea McDade, who was our HR director, probably the most successful one we've ever had. She was so good, she now has her own consulting firm. But she's come back in and she has really helped us unpack and reclaim what had been our processes, doing some correction and some follow through to deploy. But Jaquetta Wade is an HR generalist and she has stepped up and is doing what we need to do internally. Alana Berg is here as a temporary person helping to keep that workflow and benefits management going. So the department is functioning well. Andrea is engaged until the end of December, and part of her job is to help us recruit and hire an HR director. Yes?
Anita, the 20% increase or monthly service fees going into working capital. Historically, we have paid for interest and capital expenditures out of turnover of residents, and I wonder why that can't continue to be the case.
I need to understand your question better.
Or you have your working capital out of this year's budget is, I think, 19 to 20%, something like that. Historically, that's been in the range of 5, 6, 7%. So I assume that the extra part is paying capital cost, not operating cost. And that seems to be a change in the way in which the forest operates.
I'm going to take a stab at it, and Karen, you can let me know if I'm way off. If I'm understanding your question correctly, and I'm still not sure that I am, the extra revenue that is generated by the monthly service fees that we have will go towards paying, because we will have more monthly service fees. That a lot of goes to pay for the debt. And the capital asset repair and replacement is at the 2.5 level where it usually has stood every year. And that too comes from monthly service fees. So we will see more revenue than we have had in the past by almost $4,000 to $5,000. And so, again, there's an allocation of that to capital asset repair and replacement, and a lot of the rest of that goes to our debt service, as well as entry fees coming in, going to our debt service as well.
Hey, Anita, thank you for a wonderful presentation. We see lots of new faces among the staff here. Can you and each of the department heads put out for the residents tables of organization of who's who within each department?
Yes, kind of, sort of. And I say that because if you're talking about just our general organizational chart, of course. If you're talking about every staff person in every department, no. Okay, so you're talking generalized table? We'll certainly be glad to update that and put that up. And actually, it would be my goal that we actually print it big enough so that I can see it. Okay?
Okay,
Is it on the website, April?
Anita, oh,
It's on Cubigo as well. For all departments? It's our org chart, so it would be all departments.
I will admit to not having heard all the various coffee and conversation about meals, but given discussions I've heard, I'm not the only one who doesn't think they have the answer to the question. How are we going to feed all the extra people, given space, time, etc.?
Oh, Linda, you're just banging that drum. Okay, so we added another restaurant. Let me be the first one to tell you, if you all show up at the same time at the same restaurant, you will wait. And that will happen anywhere in this country at any time. There will be 4 to 5 different venues. We have hours of service that have expanded. So you will have the bistro with expanded hours and seating capacity. You have Heartwood, you have Rosewood, we have Taproot, which is going back to its traditional bar menu, and we have Greenwoods that is coming online. As I said, there will be a variety of places for you to go, a variety of times for you to do that. There in the history of the forest, nobody has missed a meal, and I guarantee you, no one will. It's going to take some time to shake out. People will find out what their routines are. The bistro's going to be slammed at first because it's the new kid in town and everybody wants to see what it's doing. But people settle into their routines. And no, the menus will not be the same everywhere you go because you don't go to the same restaurant every night. And sometimes you want Italian, sometimes you want this, sometimes you want that. And so we're creating different menus, different styles of service in different venues. So people should be able to find food. There should not be waits. There will always be an adjustment period. And we're just going to have to work it through. But I'm comfortable that nobody will miss a meal. I'm comfortable that we will have choice. And I'm very comfortable that we will be able to feed everybody. And I'm also very comfortable that if we got a problem, you'll tell us. And that's good.
Nathan's cell is, no, just kidding.
Yes, Jim?
Are there any plans to convert the vacated clinic rooms back into guest rooms? And if not, what could we do to encourage you to do that?
Well, you've already had the answer to that question from me directly, so I so appreciate you doing it again. And we haven't made our decisions, and that's not something we're prepared to talk about. Let's get the clinic moved, let's get it cleaned up, and let's figure it out. I believe that we are done with questions. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
See his pretty little